Hi, hello to everyone. Good day. In this lesson, we will be focusing on one of the important communication skills that an individual should develop, and this is the skill in listening. Here are the objectives that should be fulfilled. Number one, to state the importance of listening. Number two, to discuss the models of listening. And number three, to identify and overcome challenges to listening. What is listening? Listening is the most basic kind of communicating activity that we need to do in our daily life. It helps in making the conversation or interaction significant and effective, especially when sending or receiving messages. Listening is the ability to accurately receive and interpret messages in the communication process because it requires understanding, comprehension, and retention of information. Listening is the process of receiving information from spoken messages, constructing meaning from received spoken messages, and responding to spoken messages transmitted by the speaker or the sender. Here, this implies that listening helps in comprehending and interpreting the message being conveyed and or received that makes the relationship or connection of the sender and the receiver become stronger. So the aim of listening is to get what the speaker has to say about the subject, topic, or the message. And listening is not about the content of the message, but also about the structure or organization of the topic. Remember the Berlos SNCR model? The message should be created based on the content, the element, the structure, the treatment, and the code. If we look into the content, the message should be complete. It should be delivered completely. This is about the entirety of the message from the beginning to end. If we are talking about the element of the message, it is about the verbal or nonverbal signals, signs, and symbols that were used by the speaker in creating the message. And then for the structure, that is about the organization of the message or the chronological order or the process of how the message is constructed. For the treatment, it is how it is conveyed by the sender to the receiver. And the code, that is about the channel used in sending the message. So those are the important information that you need to know so that the aim of listening would be clear to you. So there are differences with regards hearing and listening. So hearing refers to the plain act of receiving sound. If we say plain, the normal or the common act of receiving sounds. Whereas listening refers to the process where we use our sensory experiences, meaning this is the use of background knowledge to recognize or interpret the spoken or verbal language to satisfy the need in receiving messages or information. So hearing is just the plain act. It is just the act of receiving the sound. Whereas the listening, the process of the use of sensory experiences. Okay, here are the other differences of hearing and listening with regards to description. So hearing is a natural process of receiving aural and visual stimuli. We say aural, this is anything related to sound, and stimuli, it is something that cause something to take place. Okay, listening is a skill that needs to be developed. Why? Because listening is very important in the communication process. If you have the hearing lang without the listening skill, the communication process will not be effective. So listening is a skill. Hearing is just a capability. Okay, hearing, this is the passive phase of speech reception. This is about accepting the message only. That's why it is called passive. Listening is the active phase of speech reception, meaning this is engaging in taking the information or messages. there is interpretation of the message. Next, hearing or good hearing is needed for effective listening. Take note of that. Good hearing is needed for effective listening. Okay, listening is a sub-process of communication that involves not only hearing. Because listening constitutes understanding and remembering that leads to information storage in the long-term memory. So this is for the long-term use. Whereas dun sa hearing, good hearing is needed for effective listening lang. This is not synonymous or same as good listening because hearing is just the act or process of receiving sounds while listening is a skill. Okay? And good hearing is not synonymous to good listening. Yan yung sinabi ko kanina. And listening, it constitutes understanding and remembering. So in listening, there are different levels. And understanding the levels can help in building social relationship, determine traits of people, or perform professional duties and others. So for the first level, this is the active listening. Active listening is a very important level of comprehension. So active listening requires effort and concentration and demands full attention to understand the message. Take note of this. Active listening, concentration, effort, full attention, and understanding of message. So the first type of listening under active listening is the critical or persuasive listening. This is the understanding the message based on evidence or proof presented by the speaker or sender to prove their point. This leads to reflective thinking that requires to inquire and investigate on things before considering them valuable, essential, or significant. So critical meaning you use your critical thinking skills. You think deeper than the other levels of thinking. Like for persuasive listening, this is the act of convincing a person or act of convincing the listener or the audience to listen to you or to believe on your claim. That's it. So for critical or persuasive listening, this is about the understanding of message based on evidence or proof. It should have evidence or proof to prove the point. So that para malaman din natin na yung information na binibigay ni sender is legit, authentic, true, or correct. Okay, next is the discriminative or instructional listening. Discriminative meaning you discriminate or you don't get all the information. You just look for the essential ones. Okay? For the instruction, like for example, sa mga instructions, sa instruction, hindi nyo na masyadong pinagtutuunan ng pansin yung mga ibang detalye. Ang hinahanap nilang lagi is yung important instructions. So this is listening to derive information, facts, ideas, and principles. This is to determine the difference of ideas in order to get instruction or information. So that's it for active listening. Let's move to the passive listening. This is the basic level of listening because this is merely the act of hearing. Okay? This does not rely on focus or effort that usually happens when someone is doing something else while listening. So there's no focus here, there's no effort, there's no understanding of the message. Kaya ito yung sinabing passive listening. So the first type of passive listening is empathic or therapeutic listening. This is the type of listening to relieve from anxiety and tension. This is this kind of listening is a listening as an output to heighten emotion only. Okay, for the second type, appreciative or emotional listening, this is listening for pleasure, entertainment, or enjoyment. So this means finding happiness and enjoyment in listening to a particular sound that you do repeatedly in an engaging manner. Since we already know the levels of listening, there is still a need to identify the causes of communication breakdown in terms of listening. So in order to avoid these problems, we need to know the different barriers or what we call the noise. If we are talking about barriers in listening, it basically refers to the noise because it affects the transmission of messages from the sender to the receiver. So here, noise affects the transmission of messages. So it affects the transmission of messages. It hinders the transmission or it gives barriers to the transmission of messages. So the first type of noise is external noise. So these are noise outside or from the environment. So these are physical objects that disturbs and prevent a person to focus on the message. Examples of extrinsic noise are the temperature in a room, noisy neighbors, uncomfortable chair, vehicles outside the window or the noise coming from outside of the window, classmates fidgeting with his pen or classmates fidgeting with their pen, old air conditioner, poor motivation of the speaker, speaker style when speaking, and amount of information transmitted. So these are just several of the examples that I can give. There are still plenty of examples. So these are the extrinsic noise that may hinder or prevent a person to focus on the message being received. Okay, for the second type, the internal noise. This is the noise or barrier within oneself. So this is the noise or barrier with regards to emotion or cognitive aspects, so emotional or mental disruptions that interfere with listening and focus. So here are the examples of intrinsic noise: feeling of pain, family problem, financial problem, fear of teacher, sleeplessness, constant self-focus, eagerness to talk, lack of information or knowledge, and beliefs. So all of this can hinder the transmission of message, and it can interfere with listening and focus. So in order to avoid or prevent these barriers to listening, we should do or apply the following during the communication process. Number one, stop talking. When someone is talking or speaking, listen to the speaker first. After the speaker has delivered the message, you can already talk. Okay, you should have or you should take turns. So sender muna followed by you as the speaker na magiging sender. Number two, concentrate on your task. Do not mind others' business. So if you have this task, you focus on your task and you do your task. Number three, don't criticize the speaker because all speakers have different or differences with regards how the communication or how they communicate with other people. Number four, remove distractions, focus on the task and set priorities. So know your priorities. Ano ba dapat ang uunahin? Yung mas madaling gawin o yung mas mahirap gawin? Yes, yung mas mabilis gawin o yung mas matagal gawin? Yung mas konti o yung mas madami? So you need to set priority. Number five, avoid emotional reaction or comments or criticism. Remember, keep your emotions at bay so that you will avoid any misinformation or miscommunication. So again, here, if you are angry, don't talk. If you are very happy, don't decide. If you are jealous, don't say something you don't mean. Remember, always consider your decision and emotion if you are in your neutral feeling to avoid regrets. Okay, number six, be patient. Wait for the communication to end. So if the communication process already ended, ikaw naman kung gusto mong ikaw ang next na maging speaker, ikaw din ang ikaw na rin yung next after ng first speaker. Okay? Number 7, guard against prejudice. Do not give negative comments or any comments about the speaker, especially when you do not know his or her background or culture, to avoid discrimination. Number 8, focus on your task, focus on main points, focus on the important information only. And then number 9, take down notes if needed, especially when you cannot recall things easily. Kasi in taking down notes, if you cannot recall things, you can refer to your notes. So these are the different strategies to lessen the problem in the listening skills, especially in the communication breakdown with regards to listening. Okay, thank you for listening. Thank you for attending our virtual class. And thank you for joining our session for this day. See you again next week for the next lessons. Have a nice day and goodbye to all of you.